Hi, my name is Christian Easterday. I'm the Managing Director of Hot Chili Limited. We're the largest copper development on the ASX currently, developing a large-scale copper development hub on the coastline of Chile.
Christian, good to see you again. Haven't seen you since November. You've been quite busy. So at the moment, it seems to be hot chili, hot copper market. It's very different from when we spoke last time, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. A lot's happened in the market. Copper racing to well over $4 a pound, and hot chili continuing its march to build a tier one copper asset on the coastline of Chile. It's drilling's been good, and we've certainly been making a fair bit of news flow lately.
Well, that you have. And I want to split today's conversation into two parts, because you've got yourself a new partner, you're raising money. In fact, you raised money just after we spoke last time, 25.6 million in December, but you just raised a chunk more, prospectus out, Glencore on board. So let's deal with some market stuff first, and then we can remind people about the asset a bit. Okay, so one, you brought Glencore on board. Why now? Yeah,
look, it was really a feature of a capital raising that we were positioning for, and in parallel with that capital raising, we had discussions with several parties in the corporate space, large mining companies. It's been very well known to most people that Hot Chili was really looking to align with a very capable copper company or large-scale mining company, so that we could advance this large Costa Fuego copper gold asset in Chile towards production. So we were really looking for alignment with a partner that had the technical capability and experience to bring on a large-scale development. And out of that process, we developed a very strong relationship with the Glencore team.
So, but the response in the market's been fairly muted. So I'd love to kind of dive into, what are the terms of it? What should people be looking at? Why are people put off? But just get right. You needed that strategic partner because at your team's experience level, it exhausted itself in terms of being able to drive this forward. Because share prices gone between 3 and 4 cents, for some while now, moving sideways. Copper market's really, really hot. You haven't had the reaction that others have. What do you put that down to?
Yeah, look at a number of factors. Firstly, to look at dilution and issuance. We've taken the company from a $10 million re-rate to about 150 million market cap, but that's only translated into a quadrupling of the share price in that time. And a lot of that, Matt, is quite obviously the amount of shares it's taken for us to get Hot Chili moving again. So it's really about breaking that cycle. There was a lot of feedback coming into Hot Chili as to how we break that cycle. Firstly, removing overhangs. This $40 million capital raising that we just announced that Glencore is a cornerstone of. That was about taking out the ownership of Cortadera, our world-class discovery. We had a $15 million US payment that was owing for us to purchase Cortadera outright. So we can look at that as a potentially large overhang that we've now dealt with. Secondly, I guess it was about the belief of any junior trying to develop a project of the scale of Costa Fuego. It's something that the Australian market has never really supported, large-scale copper developers or large-scale developers of any nature, really, where you're talking about building multi-decade projects that cost in excess of $1 billion. Generally, those projects are often funded and supported by the North American market. They're not really something that the Australian market likes to do. So there's also that aspect of a feeling of continuing dilution in terms of the massive amount of funding. So really, out of that, it was really about aligning with a major miner that could take this forward, provide the funding capability and the expertise and experience to develop something of this scale. So we feel that we've been working towards addressing all of these concerns that have meant that a 15 times on our market capitalisation is not reflected in a 15 times on our share price. So we've really been hard at trying to address that, and we feel that we've addressed nearly all of those key impediments to that growth. So since the announcement of the $40 million capital raising, and obviously putting one of the world's largest mining companies taking 9.99% stake in the company, you would probably expect quite a significant re-rate to commence, and we've probably seen the beginning of that. We look at other examples, a very well-known example in SolGold, when they saw Newcrest take a 10% stake. That $30 million company re-rated to around $1 billion market cap over a 7-month period, and not really a lot changed other than attracting BHP also as a large shareholder. So, I guess that we've had that moment now. We're shortly about to close a $5 million share purchase plan for our small shareholders, giving everyone the right to participate at the placement price of 3.2 cents, and very, very pleasantly a very good reaction in terms of the share price certainly being a premium to the closing price in which we announced the transaction. So if we look comparatively at other transactions announced at the same time, nearly all of those are significantly underwater. There's been a bit of a risk off in the last few weeks in the commodity space, particularly around iron ore prices sort of coming back, and also some of the base metals. But Hot Chili's performed quite well, and I believe that once we start trading normally and the share purchase plan is completed, that we'll probably start to see some great appreciation. So
the 25.6 million you raised in December was to secure Cortadera. You made a 10 million of that. 10 million was used for a installment, right? Well, 10 million for drilling or more?
So we had a 10 million US payment that was taken care of. That was our second installment,
right?
And that then also provided the drilling budget to chase this next resource upgrade, and so that always left a 15 million US final payment that was due in July of next year. We've moved really early on that to remove that overhang a year in advance. Purchase this outright. This is one of two major global copper discoveries since 2014, and we see Cortadera really growing to a new level with the next resource upgrade.
So how much money have you raised in total?
With the last capital raising of 25 million, and this is 65 million raised, within an 8-month period. So certainly we're attracting the funding.
You are now, but I'm talking in total. You're 150 million market cap. So how much have you raised in total? What I'm trying to get at is trying to understand why people are not giving you the credit that you believe you deserve.
Sure. So the total funding, from outset, is probably around 180 million Australian. So we're about to, after a very successful early period in our history in the last copper cycle, where we started the company at the end of the last copper cycle, we've now been able to turn that back around, and now we're approaching break even. And that's a really important feature. And Matt, I think you're crystal clear on this. It's taken a lot to pick ourselves up off the canvas and to get back up and now be a real standout. And so much so that, we're finally making our move to the tsx-v later this year, so that we're joining the North American boards, and we're finally going to position Hot Chili. At the moment, we're sort of an orphan in this space. We're the only major copper porphyry player in the Americas that is not listed on the TSX or tsx-v. So you sort of ask about, why aren't we getting the love? Australia has never traditionally given love to this space or these jurisdictions. So we needed to have critical mass so we could go over and compete favourably against our peers over in that space. And, Matt, as yourself and others have clearly commented, the North American large-scale copper developers have really exploded in value over the last year with that copper price, and Hot Chili hasn't. So let's make sure that we're not an orphan sitting out in the cold, and that we're sitting in with the rest of the crowd with our resource book lined up against our peers' resource books, and our growth plan lined up against their growth plans, and let's just see what happens next.
Okay, well, look, you made a comparison to SolGold. Obviously, they brought in a couple of big partners there, and they shot up and they fell away again. And I think they're trying to sort themselves out technically, and that's all good, all part of the fun and fancy of the fair for mining. But to make that comparison, we need to understand what your relationship is going to be with Glencore. So we saw some of the terms there. In fact, why don't you remind people of some of the terms there? Because there's one aspect to it which I actually quite liked, and I'd like to spend a bit of time understanding why you put it in place. So give us the broad terms first.
Yeah, so I don't like to compare too much. Every company, every project is very different, whether it's location, whether it's the altitude of the development, the nature of the concentrates that it'll put out, and the capability of the management team, etc. There's a lot of things that feed into these things. SolGold is a nice example. It's in the Americas, but the deposit is very different. You're talking about a large scale block cave at 600 meters depth in Ecuador. Comparatively against not just SolGold but our other peers, we're one of the only low altitude plays, large scale, dominantly open pit, right next to a port. With a very, very clean concentrate. And I'm sure that all of these factors were considered in the discussions that we had with Glencore. So just coming to the deal, really Glencore came into a placement that was already priced, was already backstopped and supported by North American and Australian institutions. So when they came in and took that cornerstone, they were really coming into a pre-priced placement, and it was part of a discussion that had already been underway. We were very clear that we were looking for a large shareholder, and Glencore will be now our largest shareholder at 9.99%. We'll be inviting one of their candidates or nominees to the board in the coming week or so, and very much looking forward to that. We've set up a steering committee between the two companies, and that's really just kicked off this week. On geology, and then we'll be moving to development and really to looking to tap into an immense amount of experience and skills that Glencore have in this space. But also an important part of the deal was that we announced that we'll be looking forward to negotiating and confirming an offtake arrangement with Glencore. And Glencore is the largest copper concentrate trader in the world. They handle about 52% of global copper concentrates. So for us, it was really important that the initial 8 years of our 25, 30-year targeted mine life had an offtake partner on the component that we would traditionally sell to the benchmark on a benchmark basis. So of the global copper concentrates that are sold each year, I believe it's about 56% of global copper concentrates are sold at benchmark pricing. And that's really a negotiation between the refineries and the world's largest copper producers. And certainly we wanted that to be covered, almost like putting a hedge in place over the top of the beginning of our production. So we'll be looking to negotiate something at arm's length and on a commercial basis with Glencore, over 60% of our concentrates coming out of Costa Fuego just on the first 8 years of our 25 to 30-year mine life. So we see that as a real key differentiator on what we've been able to do, and something that brings us a lot of strength on the financing table when we get there. Yeah, okay, so let's get into it, because Glencore can be seen as good news, or they can be seen as the death knell for a company. Okay, they're shrewd traders. They usually get their way. They've got the balance sheet to bully people, or they've got the balance sheet to actually set companies free. So I'm trying to work out what it is. The piece that I liked in there was this 7.5% minimum holding on the equities. Okay, they're 9.99 at the moment. They cannot go below 7.5. Why I thought that was interesting is because it means that they can't just dump stock into the market and then hold on to the offtake agreement, right? Because that's like a glorified warrant play in essence. Correct. Right? So was that hard to get over the line? Were they understanding why you wanted to do that? I mean, how much pushback did you get? Yeah, look, no, it was something that we saw alignment. We started our discussions really around building a large scale project on the coastline. The offtake was actually very subsidiary to the discussions. It was something that we saw that they could provide a significant benefit to the company. Traditional deals that are well known by the market that Glencore have engaged with other companies on are all generally deals that are for 100% of offtake for life of mine. You do the maths on what we've signed up. This is like putting a very strategic front end hedge in place on this project. So that's certainly not a negative. That's a positive in anyone's language. But really important. You touched on a point which anyone looking at this and they see Glencore and Hot Chili and offtake 9.99%, and some people may be cynical. We come back to that key point. Glencore and Hot Chili have agreed that if Glencore's shareholding falls below 7.5% at any time, and of course they'll have tag-along rights to participate in forthcoming capital raisings to maintain their 9.99% holding. But if they go below 7.5% at any time, then Glencore, rightfully so, will not have a director on the board, will not have a steering committee, and will have no rights to offtake that will be negotiated over the coming couple of months. So what that is, a really clear pointer to the market, is that we're with Glencore, and Glencore has invested in us to build a large-scale operation. Really importantly, at our point in the development cycle, we don't have offtakes to negotiate with anybody. So to actually be talking with Glencore about an offtake arrangement presupposes that we're talking about production being initiated, and to have one of the world's largest copper producers that has nearly 6,000 employees, I believe, in Chile, operating Kaiawasi and Lomas Bias operations, working with us towards building a large copper regional hub. I mean, it's a real strong endorsement to the company and all the team that have worked hard.
Well, absolutely. And if you don't deliver, I think you've got a world of hurt and pain coming. So I just want to talk about some of the lessons that you've possibly learned this year from, you talked about overhangs earlier, you mentioned it earlier. What have you learned there? Because one of the levers available to Glencore further down the line is, hey, this isn't working for us. We're going to just dump our 7.5% in the market. You kind of had a little bit of that with some institutional money being, Let's leave it at that. Recycle, let's call it that. What have you learned from that, which, has either informed these negotiations or could inform the way that you play it coming down the line? And just in terms of risk mitigation, you need to have a plan.
Yeah, exactly. And this was about changing the game for Hot Chili. This transaction was all about dealing with the issues that we were looking at and saying, well, why isn't the share price starting to appreciate? We really had to change the game in de-risking, and a significant endorsement from one of the top 4 mining companies in the world was all about that. It was also about placing stock into very stable hands that wasn't going to come out into the market. And also, we can talk about people that sell. Well, a market is there for people to sell. A market is there for people to buy. We're not certainly, upset with sellers because then you'd only be focusing on 50% of the book. So for us, changing the game, de-risking the company, giving new investors a completely different reason to be shareholders and to be there for the long term. Since we put this placement in the market, we've settled on tranche 1 of the $40 million. We've hardly seen any of those shares that we put into those hands come onto the market. And that's a really strong sign that we probably are seeing a shift now in terms of new paper going out, not coming back into the market. And it also gave us the ability to bring some new investors in from North America and Australia that hadn't been shareholders before and were coming in alongside Glencore. So I think that we're very positive about the coming months ahead. Okay, so
part of your role is to obviously drive the share price up. That's how people make money. That's how they make money. You've also got to run the company, and we'll talk about more of that in a second. But like I say, it's been kind of a sort of track in between a range for some time now. And how are you going to drive this? The fact that Glencore have got 9.9% didn't seem to excite the market too much, not as much as you'd hoped. I know you've done the OTC, and you talked about also listing the tsx-v coming up. Why are you so certain that, the North American focus is going to change your fortunes? Are you going to be able to tell the story differently there from perhaps what the ASX investors have been hearing?
I think it's not about telling the story or anything really changing. It's about the audience. And I've talked about it in several interviews, and we can look at examples of other companies. And as you well pointed out, we aren't Equinox, we aren't Andean, we aren't SolGold, we're Hot Chili. And we've got a fantastic asset that's an upper tier 2 copper asset, and we're transitioning that to a tier 1 asset. There's very few of those in the world. You just have to look at the investment by Glencore and say, well, they had an entire development pipeline to choose, and they've invested in Hot Chili. And so firstly, there is the break. So now being able to go to the tsx-v with a very different audience, we feel that we've got the overhang removed. We don't have any payments left to buy Cortadera. We have a large, very capable mining company as our largest shareholder now, assisting us to develop this project. And we're really looking forward to being shoulder to shoulder with our peers over there. And our peers over there, I don't have to keep naming them. We know what their resource bases are, and we know their strengths and their weaknesses, just as we have strengths and weaknesses also. But we believe that the North American market is certainly very favourable in terms of its valuations that are reflected around the completely changing landscape for the copper price and where copper supply-demand fundamentals are going.
Okay, so
there is no certainty in the world, Matt, but I would have to say that I'm continuing to knock over all the reasons as to why not.
Okay, I'm still sticking with Glencore, because you're telling me that people should be paying attention, so I want them to understand it, or at least answer some of the questions. So Glencore, it's a small bet for them. In the scheme of the scale of Glencore, this is a small bet for them. They, of course, are looking to get off-take agreements for copper. The projections for copper pricing, are going through the roof. We've seen, 20,000, 25,000 bandied around. Okay, so what else are they going to do? You've said they've got tag-on rights and they can follow their equity investment. What are they going to do for you when it comes to debt, in terms of enabling you to get this thing into production once it reaches that stage?
Exactly. I look at the breadth of Glencore's offering, if you want to call it that. They offer us credibility first and foremost. They have rubber stamped this from their global excellence copper team. This has been approved at the highest levels of Glencore. It's one of the first deals transacted by their new CEO, Nagel, who's replaced Glasenberg after 19 years. They are on the front foot of ensuring that their resource book is moving towards a future-facing metals market and a green revolution. This is not just about Hot Chili. This is about Glencore's positioning. This is a significant endorsement also for the country of Chile. We've, over that period, you want to talk about, reasons why not? Well, it was certainly in the press that a communist senator had proposed a super tax, just like what happened in the last boom in Australia. We're certainly not immune to it either. And when you have one of the world's largest copper producers doubling down in a country like Chile, which is a top 3 mining country, that's also got to provide a lot of confidence around investments going forward into Chile. So what can they offer? They can offer credibility across the country we're investing in and the asset that we have. And then in terms of going forward, it is about having that partner that's got the experience to build something of this scale and to offer that experience and on a technical level with our team and our management group, and also from a guidance perspective on our board. These are really, really key things that any junior really needs to have to be able to actually make it and transition into a large-scale copper producer. And this is no small project.
But I think the question was around show me the money. Are they going to... Credibility, expertise, lovely.
Because I don't know what their intention is, and I would hope that they would be, seeing these first year or two of significant investment, and their dollars being spent wisely, and that can create a lot of value in terms of the growth of the asset, and that we meet particular hurdles internally for Glencore. And we believe that we've got every ability to do that on the next resource upgrade. We have been in the background really de-risking how the concept of this large combined asset is going to be developed, with one processing facility, optimizing transport options, which are really extending our reach. And I believe what Glencore is invested in is not the asset that you are looking at right now, some 750 million tonnes. They've invested in a vision for what they can see this becoming. And that's very much aligning with what we see. We don't just see what's in front of everybody, two large-scale assets that are going to be connected. What else is there in the region? What else is there to acquire? What do the growth targets look like? We have a pretty exciting pipeline, and Glencore are very well aware of that. Now we've got to put the shoulder to the wheel and make that a reality.
Okay, so I've talked to other companies who have had big, mid-tiers or some of the big boys move in, take a board position, take a large chunk of equity, but they move at a different pace. They've got a massive portfolio of projects. There's an order of play for them. How do you retain control over the speed at which you move? I know they're only sitting at just under 10%, so not a big say, but influential. So your shareholders need you to move quickly. Glencore may have a different agenda.
Look, we just came out of a very positive, I think our second sort of almost steering committee meeting this morning, where we were looking at what the pipeline looks like for us, and where the spend is going. And, we've had some very, very positive discussions with our counterparts at Glencore. And all I can say is that they are very enthusiastic about the growth and about focusing into the growth, making sure that we actually understand how big this thing is to be able to optimally develop this project. And so, I don't think that Glencore is going to be putting the brakes on anytime soon. I think that they are very aligned and excited about where this resource goes to in the near term.
Right. Okay. So growth is different from timing. Right, you have to play the market. We talked about it earlier. You've got to play the market and run the company. So, headlines are what people look at. Getting into production is what people look at. And growth suggests that Glencore want to see the scale of this opportunity maybe before they want to do anything. So again, when you say positive conversations, can you be a bit more specific about objectives for both parties?
Yes, I have to be a little bit careful. Obviously, we're talking about confidential discussions, but I think that both companies understand where we are in the copper cycle, understand or have a view as to where copper is going. I think the positioning of Glencore is very obvious, what they're doing in terms of building their copper business. Most of the significant returns that they've just achieved in the last year have been related to that copper business, and so we're certainly part of that, and we're also part of Glencore's attempt to account for depletion in their resource books, and on their reserve books, and also in their trading books. So we to be specific about that, I don't think that I think it would be Glencore wanting to probably see the drilling speed up as we would like to. That's all about capability in terms of funding. It's also therefore also about dilution, which we've got to manage, as you well said. So I think that I think both parties are looking to really accelerate from here.
Okay. The deal with Glencore, is that specifically for copper, or is the gold included in that, and silver and moly for that matter? It
will naturally, because it's a concentrate, it will naturally cover all concentrates. They're not just a massive metal trader in the copper market. They're one of the world's largest traders across all metals.
Okay, so it's all of the above, everything that you
certainly will be. Yes.
Got. Okay, fine. So talking of drilling, resource update. When can we expect to see one?
Look, we're aiming for late this year, paired and dovetailed in with the tsx-v, so it follows shortly thereafter. However, we're also drilling some very exciting holes into Cortadera. We're planning to drill our first programs on a number of growth targets, which we'll be talking to the market about shortly. And so, you have to be very careful when you're talking about those kind of timeframes when you've got a lot of unknowns. So, if it's late this year or it's the beginning of next year, but certainly it's not far away. We've achieved a significant amount of extensional and expansion results to the initial 450 million tonne resource at Cortadera. And I imagine that we're continuing to assess that growth. It's certainly looking very positive, but we've just recently embarked on a fairly aggressive expansion program on the high-grade core and a particular horizon of the high-grade core that is grading, very wide intercepts, 100-metre wide intercepts at 1% copper and 0.5 gram gold. And, we're looking forward to getting some results out shortly that speak to that and speak to how that's expanding. And so we've got another 6 or 8 holes that are going into that zone. And let's not make too many promises that are short-sighted before we see what those results look like.
Okay, so results dependent. But you've been quite slow on getting results back into the market. What's wrong? Is the assay process just taking a long time in Chile at the moment?
Yeah, exactly, Matt. And I imagine you probably asked the same question to nearly every resource company CEO. It's shocking. It's frustrating. We're out to about 42 days total turnaround from final submission of assay, which, to be honest, when I say that, people here in Western Australia say, geez, that's not bad. Because here in Western Australia, they're out sitting at 7 and 8 week turnarounds. It would be fantastic if I was just assaying for one commodity and it was gold. And I just had one analysis technique to go through. But we have a multi-commodity ore bodies that are dominantly copper, gold, silver, molybdenum, and all of the rest of the multi-element suite that we analyse for being analysed in 3 labs in different locations in the world. So it's a bit of complication. I can't do much about oxygen being used for hospitals rather than ICP. So it's just something that we have to live with. And that means that we have to trust our geologists significantly for high quality logging. We have to trust our XRFs and our correction factors and our analysis to ensure that we have good eyes on what's going on with our planning. Because when you're getting your final assays back 40 days later, you're making decisions off holes you've already drilled and are still waiting on assays. So we're no different to anyone else, Matt, and I'd love to click my fingers and turn it back into 18-day turnarounds that we used to enjoy, 17-day turnarounds. So that is and continues to be an issue. But we also like to focus on really material news flow. We don't like to have to tell the market that we woke up in the morning and tied our shoelaces.
Okay. On the SPP, $5 million, why have you done that?
Look, that was really about just ensuring that that we didn't forget about all shareholders. We didn't put this in the hands of just large checkbooks. We are trying to institutionalize the register. We're trying to tighten up the register into fewer hands. So that's a process that we're continuing to do. But, we also have to look at the last time that we gave shareholders an opportunity. We gave them an opportunity at 1 cent. We gave them an opportunity at 1.5 cent. And we felt that this was a good opportunity to again, let our smaller shareholders participate, particularly on such a milestone capital raising. So it's something that we did. And a lot of companies don't like to do it because it means that you see small volume trading where people are selling it in the market at here and applying to get stock 30-40% cheaper. And it's just one of those things that does occur, and that it's going to occur. And That's the reason why a lot of companies don't give back to small shareholders with share purchase plans and the like. So, I've been very, very surprised with the response to the share purchase plan. I believe that probably by the time this goes to air, that the market will find out that was closed within 5 days, has been a really strong response. So we maintain the discretion to close that early. We'll certainly give the shareholders a final warning that it's closing in 8 hours or so, and we'll close that off and scale it appropriately for the investors that have put their hand up early.
Okay, so you're rewarding retail and allowing them to do that arbitrage play. It's a price worth paying. Exactly,
and look, Matt, never forget the market is made at the moment, whether it's over in your jurisdiction or North America or Australia. Retail makes the market and has been doing that for quite some time, and we are very welcoming of our retail support. We've seen some fantastic support from private shareholders, whether they be 708 sophisticated and professional investors or not. All shareholders have a stake in our company, and we intend to make sure that all shareholders are offered those same opportunities when we can.
Okay, when the SPP's closed, $5 million, let's say, how much cash will that leave you with?
Yeah, look, we'll have just a bit over 40 million available. Once tranche 2 closes in a couple of weeks, we'll organise to make that $15 million US payment immediately, and that's going to leave us with a balance of somewhere around 20 million Australian, which is certainly more than enough money to complete our drilling programs, to achieve the resource upgrade, and also to really have a crack at almost completing that pre-feasibility for next year.
Right. So things were getting a bit tight, I suspect, when you were talking to Glencore. Did that affect your ability to negotiate? Were they understanding?
Yeah. Like everything in life, you're sitting there having a very serious negotiation with a party such as Glencore, and we were also having discussions with other parties at that time. And we had a significant amount of interest from the market and from institutions to the point where we actually had 2 or 3 blocks of cornerstone investors that had their hand in the air for about 8 weeks. And, it's a strange thing when you're sitting there with $10 million checks on the sideline saying, Christian, we just want to give you money. And we're not really that price sensitive. And for us to be saying no, I think most of the market knew something was coming. And it's one of those things where you have to hold your nerve, and we had to tighten up around our expenditure, and but at the same time maintain our momentum and pretend that we were 10 foot tall and our chest out. So we did that, and I'm very pleased that we were able to secure a cornerstone investor of the ilk of Glencore into the raising.
You held your nerve, you put your chest out, and you got it over the line, but it could have gone the other way. So next time further down the line, would you play it that way again?
I don't think that I want to really sort of play brinkmanship like that too many times in my life. I had a hard time sleeping for a good 5 weeks, Matt. So I was very glad when we closed, which was actually done while I was with my wife and children at dinner, and I ended up spending the entire night out in an alleyway on the phone with my counterparts in North America and over in with the Glencore team. So yes, it really came down to the final hours before that $40 million was entirely spoken for.
Yeah, we've all been there. It's not nice. Just finally, on the Chile factor, because I want to wrap it up. I know it's late there for you. On the Chile factor, obviously elections, you're looking in, being a bit nervous, as you say, statements from various politicians, talking about kind of punitive type raises in taxes for the copper producers, of which there are, there's only a handful producing at the moment. Do you think we need to get November out of the way? That's when the elections are, before the international markets look at Chile and go, okay, it was just the same old narrative as we've seen each time there are elections, and we can breathe a sigh of relief and move on? Or do you think it's going to run and run?
I think the pre-presidentials have already had that impact. To see a centre-left and a centre-right candidate, both which have been very vocal opponents of the proposed communist tax bill, and have been quite proactive in working with the current government in finding a tax solution that gives back and accounts for the calls from the public that they want to see. I think that we're going to see something very normal transpire, something very conservative, and almost in an instant, when those two presidential candidates were announced in very strong results, you instantly saw the reaction in the Chilean stock exchange. 7% push that day, and we didn't so much see it over on our side of the world. But I think most investment banks, most things that I've seen, it's almost like you're not even hearing about it anymore. So I think in the minds of most investors, it's probably been dealt with in terms of who the candidates are for the next presidential election. So there may well be some sigh of relief from people that are still dubious, but I think that probably 80% of that is already taken care of, given what's transpired in the last couple of months.
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, we spoke to the president of mining associations, some politicians, a lawyer, some people from the media, and I think the general consensus seems to be it will be a kind of slightly more conservative approach. And here's the bit that kind of caught my ear was it'll be more in line with the tax regime in Australia, right? Yeah, we're hearing the same things. Canada and Australia. Chile knows their place. Yeah. They know who their main competitors are. Australia, Canada, Chile, top three, has been like that for a long, long time now, and they know that they've been slightly cheaper from a tax equivalency perspective with Canada and Australia. It's always been a little bit of a competitive advantage in Chile, but I imagine that 2-3% competitive gap is going to close. That's what I'm hearing, but we'll wait and see. Okay. Well, appreciate the update, Christian. I'm going to let you go because it's been a long one, but I think really useful to understand the relationship between you and Glencore, the ins and outs, and what the future looks like. Well, stay in touch when the when the tsx-v listing happens and the resource update is out. Give us a call. Great. Thank you very much, Matt.